Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Sphera live event. I am here today with two wonderful people who are going to speak with me about the EU's digital COVID certificate, which is this new program that I'm sure we've all heard about by now, which will allow people to have a digital proof of having either been vaccinated against COVID-19, having a recent negative test, or having recovered from COVID-19. The main use that we speak about it for is indeed to reopen our borders and to start traveling with a little bit more ease than we have in these past months and indeed the past almost 2 years now. So first, I would like my guests to introduce themselves. So let's begin with Natalie. Could you introduce yourself, please, and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Natalie. I am a journalism student based in Cologne, Germany. I am a self-proclaimed political junkie, and I'm a host of the podcast Evris, which is a podcast on European politics and social issues.
Wonderful. Very happy that you could join us today. And Brigitte, tell us a little bit about yourself and about the organization that you work for, which is indeed very relevant to the topic of a digital COVID certificate.
Yes, definitely. Well, first of all, thank you guys for having me today. Thank you for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our discussion today. I'm Brigitte. I am living in the Netherlands. I'm 25 years old, and I'm currently working as a new business development project leader at Spoedtest. Spoedtest is a test center, so we test for corona and offer different kinds of tests, like PCR testing, quick tests, the rapid antigen test, and also antibody tests.
Mm-hmm. And could you tell us a little bit more to kind of open up the discussion, how exactly, what the link is essentially between these testing centers and the creation of a digital COVID certificate?
Well, it's definitely relevant in the sense that you see kind of the waves of testing come by according to legislations put in place by the government. So if you see, for example, now, today was a very hectic day at work, and that is because as of the 1st of July, we have the Corona Check app. So that means that people can test for free, or it's subsidized by the government, and we execute those tests. But seeing the legislation change also changes the way that we move as a company.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to expand on that a little bit?
So yes, of course. So if you look at the beginning of COVID, people were scared. So they would test to see if they had COVID. And later on, so maybe I think around February or March, people were testing less, and it was actually quite quiet because people didn't have the urgency to test anymore. So that kind of went away. And as you see the spikes go up, testing also goes up. If you see that people want to travel because regulations have lifted in other countries, people begin to test more as well. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a strong correlation between, what kind of legislations are put in place and how much we're testing as a company. So we definitely do that. Also, for other people watching, my cat is here, so you might hear me once in a while.
It's nice, kind of another vocal participant in this event. I like that.
He has a lot to say about the digital pass.
Cats usually do.
Yeah.
Okay, it looks like we lost Julie for a second.
Lost Julie again. Oh, there we go.
All right.
Oh no.
But do you think that there is a spike in testing solely because people are more interested in traveling, or do you see a sort of genuine interest in people wanting to know whether they have it out of safety concerns?
Yeah, I think that you have testing for multiple reasons. So you have testing because they want to travel. Oh my God. You have testing because people want to travel. You have testing because people are scared. You have testing because they have to test from, where they work, or if they want to go somewhere. You also have testing because it plays very much into the emotions. And that is something that I saw a lot when I was testing myself, because I was, I was the one testing people at one point as well. People were just very scared. So I found that was also a big reason why people were testing.
Can you hear me? Am I back?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Okay,
back.
cool. Nice. It's very difficult for me to tell because I can still see you when I'm disconnected. So
We'll
as
give you
a
props.
general question, and perhaps to both of you can chip in to whatever extent you'd like, but how functional generally do you think something like the digital COVID certificate will be? Do you see any negatives? Do you think that there will be ways to kind of cheat the system that will maybe make it more difficult for it to be efficient? Or what are your general thoughts on the concept of a digital COVID certificate?
Well, I think I see it in a pretty positive light, just because there is a sense of a coordinated policy in the European Union, which we've seen has been a little bit of a struggle throughout the pandemic. So in my opinion, this should aid traveling between European states. Now, whether that will be functional in a sense of whether it will create huge queues in the airports and just make things a huge mess, I wouldn't be able to tell you how the logistics would work.
Mm. And you, Brigitte?
Well, I think the concept of a digital green pass, I think, or a COVID pass, I think that in practically it sounds great. I mean, in theory it sounds great, but practically I think it's a bit more, it's difficult to execute. And what Natalie said before, having member states, the 27 member states agree on anything is already difficult. So then having the 3 criteria of showing a negative corona test or being vaccinated by a vaccine approved by the World Health Organization, or showing that you've recovered from COVID, I think those 3 criteria are flawed in itself. The reason for that is because testing, showing a proof of a test it's a test moment. So that's hard. If I get tested right now, but I start to show, symptoms at a later date, and then have enough DNA to actually get tested on, then I'm going to show a positive test. But otherwise, it would still be negative. So I think that is also difficult because you can still spread COVID in that way. The second one is showing a recovered test, or showing that you've recovered from COVID. That's also difficult because antibodies actually only show for about 2 to 5 months. So in that way, it's also flawed because you can get COVID again, especially with the Delta variants going around. And then the third one, the vaccines. And I know we're only talking about the EU, but if you look at it on a broader scale, not all vaccines are WHO approved. So in that way, meeting all the criteria to get such a digital, pass, I think it's difficult to say. And, facilitating that in the airports, I mean, that will also be a hurdle, I think.
And I'm already envisaging scenes of people at the airport being denied flights, and that kind of stuff, which I think will just make it a lot more of a hassle to travel than it already is, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Natalie?
I also just wanted to mention that while the EU still, does have a coordinated policy on this finally, they're still being a little bit slow when it comes to things, approving the Sinopharm vaccine from China, or the vaccine from Russia as well. And Hungary is a European Union state, and they have been using the Russian vaccine a lot. So I think it could also lead to creating a divide between a larger divide between the East and the West of Europe. Yeah. And maybe the EU really needs to brush on that a little bit. The Sinopharm vaccine has just been approved by the WHO, and they have called on the EU to hurry up with their decision as well. So we'll have to see how that goes. But it does create a little bit of a sort of an intersection of the who has and has not, so to say, of the continents.
Yeah. I definitely see that. And to dive a little deeper into vaccination for a little bit, and I'm interested to hear your answer on this, Brigitte, is, do you think that vaccinations in general, I mean, a lot of countries right now are really, getting quite far along in the vaccination race. Do you think that vaccinations will have a big impact on the amount of testing that people do? I mean, I really personally in my life feel like everyone I know who's vaccinated is feeling very impervious to all ills. And some people seem to have conflated vaccination with this inability to ever be infected with COVID ever again, or would it be for the first time? Yeah. So do you think that there's going to be less testing because there's this kind of sense of security that people have from the vaccine?
That's the hope, that the vaccine will be the end all be all. But it's difficult to say because people still get sick. So testing is kind of their safety blanket to make sure that it's not COVID. I mean, we can still get sick, but eliminating one idea of getting COVID is, it's what people grab onto, it's what people hold to, it's what we have right now. Because we live in such a precarious kind of social climate at the moment, I think that moving forward in the short term, people will be testing. So I don't think that's going to go away right now because, oh, did we lose Julie?
Oh, I think we did. Oh, she's back. Okay.
All right.
Keep going.
Okay. I think people are going to continue testing right now. I also think for, one reason because not everybody's getting vaccinated. So I think for that reason, people are going to continue testing. People don't really have trust yet in the vaccines alone.
Absolutely. And I think that's a very good point. And just on a personal point, did you, in your experience of working there, and perhaps this applies more to when you were administering tests yourself, but did you have to get tested quite often? Was that something that just became a part of your weekly life, potentially?
I got tested today, I got tested yesterday, the day before that. I've been testing every day. And the reason is because we have a lot of people coming in that are positive. And that's just still the case. That's just still a reality. We do disinfect everything, but just for safety measures, we do also test ourselves. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And to continue on with this idea of traveling, which is very much what we're discussing at large today, I'd like to get your hot takes.
No,
we lost you again.
Oh.
No. Well, maybe we can carry on until she finally gets back. But do you feel like it's difficult to convince people to get tested in Brussels? What is the situation like there?
To get tested?
Yeah, no, to convince people to get tested in the first place.
I think that people are quite keen on getting tested because they want to be safe. I think vaccinating is more of an issue.
Okay.
Of I shouldn't get vaccinated. I don't trust it. How can they create something that quick? Bill Gates is going to know where I am.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different things that you can, that's kind of negative connotations around the vaccines. But I think testing, now that's free, it's quite easy to convince people of a test. I don't think that's ever really been a hassle. Yeah.
And I do, am I back? Yes.
Yeah, you are back.
Okay, cool. I do really agree with this idea that if you remove the money barrier, I'm not sure that people are that reticent to get tested, even though it can be a little bit uncomfortable at times. But so to go back to my question before I was ripped out of the event by my unstable Wi-Fi connection, what do you think, and this is a question for both of you to kind of just give me your takes, be they personal, professional, whatever you want. What do you think the future of traveling will look like or will be, especially if we take into consideration new variants or different ways of traveling, different methods, the fact that there seems to be a slight hierarchy between, traveling individually in a car privately versus taking a plane publicly with other people. So what are your thoughts on that, the future of traveling?
Well, Natalie, start?
I mean, it's a pretty loaded question. I'm not able to see the future yet. Maybe the next vaccine, who knows? But I already get a sort of feeling that people are sort of planning holidays within their own countries now, or I mean, I'm based in Germany. We're very close to the Netherlands and Belgium, so a lot of my friends are just choosing to take the train and go over there rather than flying to Mallorca, which is something that Germans love to do. So I don't know how long this will last. I know a lot of them are already kind of getting a little agitated, a little bit seasick. Seasick in a sense that they want the sea, not that they are sick on it. I don't know what this would mean for the future, but it could also be a somewhat of a good thing. I mean, we already know that flights, they are really bad for the environment, and we see that last year the lockdowns has really actually shown us what it can mean not to have all these airplanes flying all the time. There are other solutions to this, but then there's also the issue of, for example, I come from Cyprus, which is a southern European country, and we are very reliant on tourism for income. For our economy is largely based on it. A lot of businesses are only seasonal businesses, and last year was already hard for them, and this year doesn't look very good for them either. So I could see how that could be worrying for countries like Cyprus or Malta, that, you know, where their economies are not as diversified as, let's say, Italy or Spain.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of to piggyback on what you were saying, you know, you have countries that are heavily tourist reliant, and I think that within the European Union, I think that it really depends on the opening of the states, and I think that the digital green pass, I keep saying digital green pass.
They just changed it, so it's fine.
I'll change it. I think it will, it'll definitely ease. This pass is definitely going to ease travel and movement of people. And I think that will definitely help the economies within the European Union. So on the short term, I think that reconnecting people in society in a safe way is the priority of, such a pass. But I think on a global scale, it's going to be more difficult because we have decided that these 3 criteria are enough for free movement of people, but the world hasn't decided the same. So I think for the future of travel and the future of these kind of tourist-based economies, it's going to be a challenge. And I think that a lot of time is going to go over that before we can freely move again. But I think starting within the European Union and helping our own economy for us is the priority. And I think that, the member states have definitely agreed on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've raised some really interesting points, and I think it's important to look at it from a global perspective as well, especially since we hear a lot of talk about, and rightfully so, of course, about the kind of vaccine discrepancies worldwide and what that means for different countries who they themselves believe that the pandemic is over when it's totally not the case in other places. So I think that's a very important point to raise. Absolutely.
Yeah, because India, they have the COVID shield, I think, and then India's prime minister also asked, please don't make a COVID passport because we just haven't been able to vaccinate. And that also leads to them not really being able to travel as much. So, as we were previously saying, you're kind of discriminating towards different countries that haven't been able to have the how do you say that?
Access to the vaccination the way that we have.
The access to the vaccines, and that's very reflective of, the economies that we have. Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of discrimination, this is one of the questions that I have for you today is, if we take the principle that it's a digital COVID certificate, and I feel like the digital factor is often something that can create a lot of stress, suspicion perhaps. So if we take the idea that this pass will consist of information about someone's vaccination status, their test results, their recovery status, do you think there might be some discrimination that arises from these kinds of differentiations? and these kinds of sharing of information?
I can't speak on discrimination. I know that they are also offering it in print. You will have definitely, you will have to share more data than a lot of people are happy to share. I'm actually a little bit more concerned about how this would create a sort of divide in society, in a sense of, I feel that most people who are hesitant towards both vaccinations and testing, there are people who are hesitant of getting themselves tested, or they're hesitant of believing governments when they bring up or when they publish the numbers that they have on positive and negative cases. And I feel, most of these people, this is purely based on anecdotal evidence, but most of the people that I know who are that hesitant are not tin foil hat wearing people, QAnon followers, whatever. They're just citizens who are kind of concerned about the government or someone anyway, telling them, or almost forcing in quotation marks, these sort of invasive procedures on them. And I think some people might perceive this COVID certificate as something that is, again, being forced on them. And maybe it could make people a little bit more hesitant and even less trustworthy towards institutions and health organizations.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree with you. I think that people, and what you said, they're not QAnon people, but they're very much just normal, well in society, even intelligent people. But the problem, or not problem, just humans and how we work, we're people of habit. So every day we go through the same processes. We go to the same country, to travel. And in the past few years, we've seen that completely shaken up. So how we exist in our world and our society has been flipped upside down and thrown around. So then saying, hey, you can get a vaccine, or hey, you have to test, then those are they're quite extreme measures to take to just go on with your day-to-day life as you know it. But the reality is that that's not what we have anymore. We've experienced this life-changing pandemic, world-changing pandemic, and we are now dealing with its consequences. So whether that's a vaccine, whether that's testing, it's also, as I said before, it's reconnecting people in society in a safe way. So I think by these, governments implementing such invasive measures, it's the only way.
Do you, just a question that came up to me right now, Brigitte, but do you feel like the government, the European Union, the WHO, whatever, do you think they're doing enough to communicate with people who are concerned about these sort of quote unquote invasive procedures? Do you feel like there could be more done there?
Yeah, I definitely think there can be more. I think that even if you watch, if I hear my prime minister speak on the COVID challenges or new statistics or new legislations, even for me, sometimes I'm like, whoa, how did that happen, or where did that come from? I don't know if you guys know, but in the Netherlands, everything is open again. So you can go to a club, you can go to restaurants. And I thought my first thing was, whoa, this is really fast. And I felt weird going into a bar if someone was very close to me. And I don't think the government communicated that properly. And for me, I work at a test center, so I see how many people are still testing, kind of in conjunction with how many people are tested positive as well. But seeing then everything kind of being opened up, that surprised me. So me, somebody who's very much in the COVID scene, if I could say it that way, opposed to somebody that doesn't want anything to do with it and then questions the government. So I think that all organizations could do more to communicate it in the right way and kind of put people at ease. But I also think people could do more research. If you're really questioning that much about the government and institutions, I mean, you have a phone, there's a plethora of information about all legislation's there. So if you're very curious, then you can also look it up.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of playing devil's advocate to myself, but I think
absolutely, yeah.
I think both ways go. Yeah.
The old Google is your friend.
Yeah,
but I do
all
then
the time, but most of the time.
Yeah, that's the thing. I do then see the slightly negative side of, nothing's really verified on the internet. So you might go looking around for some answers and then end up on the wrong website and then be finding things that are not necessarily answers to your questions.
You could be fully convinced that the world is flat, that the earth is flat, but you can also be fully convinced that it's not. So it's also, and that's what I mean with the government should make information more accessible. They should make the right information more accessible.
Yeah, absolutely. And also digestible. My main problem with trying to find information online has always been that I just don't necessarily always understand the language, and some things, at least, when we were in those kinds of phases where it seemed like restrictions were sort of changing week by week, travel and stuff like that, there was often a couple of times where it seemed like there was some very real inconsistencies on the websites I was looking at. And I was like, but wait, am I allowed to do this or not? Because it seems like I can do it if it's under 5 people, but I can also do it with 10. So what's the story there? So I do agree with both your points that it's very much a manner of communicating efficiently and in an accessible language and formats and methods. I'm actually wondering, Brigitte, off the back of that, is there anything in particular that's Spoedtest, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, does to communicate with people about the testing procedure, to let them know that it is something that is safe, it is something that is not actually that invasive for as an experience?
Yeah, so again, we have everything on our website. So the website is very informative, but it's up to people to really read that through. But even when you come in, we explain the procedure. We say, hey, this is what we're doing. And do you have any questions? And then usually they say, no, I just want results. And then they're off. So we explain to the best that we can. But I think because of how many people test and the different reasons why, we can't explain the exact procedure for the reason that they're doing it. So for example, going on vacation, I test negative today, but then I'm actually positive when I'm traveling. That's a whole different narrative that I can tell somebody that is testing because they want to go to a festival. Yeah.
I see that. And just before we run out of time, I have a few more questions that are maybe a little bit more tourism and travel related. So one question is, what do you think, in your humble opinions, as we know, what can local authorities do to kind of help these tourist hubs thrive again? I mean, you've mentioned, Natalie, that Cyprus is a very...
I lost you again.
No, really?
But I think I know where you're going with the question.
Yeah, I think so too.
Okay, so what can local governments do? I mean, get their shit together, if I'm allowed to curse on this. I mean, I think in the well, if we're talking about Cyprus, for instance, they kind of let it loose a little bit. They're still behind on the vaccination program. I think, first of all, they need to get their local population safe, of course, before they're able to accept tourism again. So that would definitely be one thing. Another thing is, of course, to take these sort of things like the EU COVID certificate seriously, and also not be tempted to be like, yeah, let's just open up and let people from the UK in again, because we have a lot of tourism from the UK. Even though they're getting rid of basically all their COVID measures by the 19th of July, which could, of course, put our locals in danger, and it doesn't make it very safe for other travelers coming from other places. So, to wrap up, make sure that you get your stuff together. Think locally before you can start thinking about tourism again.
Do you have any thoughts you'd like to share on that, Brigitte?
Yeah, I think, you worded it perfectly. I think that local authorities, they definitely, some governments some economies are very heavily dependent on travel and on tourism. So taking the precautionary measures to restart their economy again by tourism, I think, starting locally is more important than starting globally. Yeah, definitely.
And also just convincing people to take the vaccine in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Communication.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think this whole local versus global idea also fits into a lot of, I mean, as you mentioned earlier, the big debate about the first lockdowns was very much, are we saving the planet inadvertently by not suddenly flying as much as we used to, but now things are taking off again. So I think that's a very good way to think about it, to think, in terms of travel, is it necessary to actually cross half the planet? Or are there some equally interesting and valuable experiences to be had very, very close to home?
Definitely. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we are out of time, but I would like to thank you both very much for joining and for being so responsive and great when my connection would just take me out of the event. But I really enjoyed this discussion, and thank you for coming, and hopefully see you again very soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Much.
All right. Have a good evening. Bye.